Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Growers Live. I am Josh Satin, and as usual, I am super excited to be here. Very special guest. We have Daniel Mays on tonight, and couldn't be happier about having him on, and really excited. So, all you no-till nerds out there, we're here to talk to Daniel and his brand new book that came out today, and it is super special, and I'm not exaggerating whatsoever. Very, very excited to have Daniel on again and be able to share this with you guys. And if you haven't already bought this book, please, you should. It's not even that expensive. It's awesome. I don't know how it's so cool. Anyways, just a little bit of what's coming up here. In 2 weeks, we have Corinne Hanch from Loving Mama Farm, and then that will be on November 24th, so right before Thanksgiving. And then Spencer Rudolph from Sage Hill Ranch Gardens on December 8th. Those are the next two shows coming up. So that's what I have for you guys today. And like usual, we'll be chatting for a few minutes and then taking questions from our Patreon members. So if you're not already Patreon members, please go check that out, patreon.com/no-till-growers, and support the work that Jesse and myself and Jackson and a bunch of other people will be doing for No-Till Growers, and a lot of cool stuff coming up. And also, if you are not, please go check out Jesse's season 3 is starting up, and it's awesome. So lots of great no-till stuff for you guys out there. But let's get on to getting Daniel Mays in here, which is why you guys are here. You guys don't want to just listen to me talk. So let me get Daniel in here. Daniel Mays, good evening.
Hello, how's it going?
Doing awesome, man. Thanks for coming on tonight. Really, really pumped for you to be here. How are things going? What you got? Like a new kid, a new book? You know, like there's a lot going on, right?
Yeah, a lot of new things for sure. It's a busy time, but yeah, really excited to be here.
That's awesome, man. All right, so let's talk about your book a little bit. Let's get that. That's the big news here. First of all, is the season sort of wrapped up for you guys? Do you guys have snow already?
No, not yet. Actually, we're having a freak warm spell. It was like 70 degrees today. So no, we're wrapping up by Thanksgiving. We'll have everything like mulched and ready to hunker down for the winter at that point.
Okay, so that's the normal cutoff is Thanksgiving for you guys?
For us, yep.
Okay. Yeah, it was like 80 degrees here today. It was just like I don't understand I mean, I'm not complaining. It's nice, but it's just weird. All right, so let's talk about your book a little bit, Daniel. Like, when did this become an idea for you? When did that start?
Yeah, I feel like it was like 3 years ago that I thought it would help organize my thoughts and hopefully help other people, engage with no-till ideas, to put it all down on in a book format. So I reached out to a couple of publishers, and story jumped on it, and yeah. So and then I wrote it like over 2 years ago.
Oh wow! Okay.
And then it takes a long time. And then there were, lots and lots of edits and updates and all that, and then all the photos. So yeah, it took like over 2 years to go from that first idea to actually publishing.
So, did you have the idea of like wanting to write a book forever ago, and this just sort of came about, or was this made the most sense for you to express your ideas? I mean, how did that? I'm just curious, as like I love making videos. I like to talk to people that are like in other medias, and like, how did that work out for you? Were you always like thinking I should write a book at some point in my life, or I mean, it's a huge accomplishment, Daniel. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I guess maybe it was that, or maybe it's just like I'm like you, except too shy to be on camera. So like a book was a safer way to do that behind the scenes, but here I am on camera anyway.
Okay.
But yeah, I think just it just felt like sort of the next step in getting all these ideas, all these practices that we've been working on, like into a coherent format that could hopefully be helpful for other people too.
Okay, and when do you think that everything sort of clicked at Frith Farm, and you were like, I got my systems dialed in, and I think this is the time to share it? Like, I think I go through that. Like, I feel like every year I feel like I know less. I don't know if like all the growers out there feel like, I feel like the more I learn, the less I know. So when do you feel like, all right, I feel good about this, I want to share this? When did that sort of click for you?
Yeah, I'm not sure it has yet.
Okay, all right. Fair enough.
Yeah, but no, I think probably like, I don't know, 5-6 years in, I was, starting to just get more interest from other people and like why you're doing some weird stuff and it seems to be working. And, I was talking at more sort of ag conferences and trade show and whatnot. And yeah, that's when I sort of first started thinking about it. Like, oh, maybe I should like put this down on paper. But that was before no-till was even really a term that I was hearing much. So yeah, and then now that buzz around no-till and such interest in it, the timing just is kind of good that way too.
Very cool. Yeah. So can you tell? I don't know if everyone's familiar with your work, and honestly, I mean, I'd seen a little bit of the stuff you were doing, but until we met last October, and I saw your presentation at the No Till Growers Workshop, which was incredible. Um, I was really my eyes were a little bit more open about the things you were doing, and as you said, like you're a little bit more shy and not like open about it, but you're doing amazing stuff. And so talk a little bit about like the general idea behind how your farm operates. I know like human powered and no-till and ecologically sound farming, and if you can just talk a little bit about that if people aren't familiar with what you do.
Totally. Yeah, I really try to have a holistic approach. Try to think holistically about farming, about just life. And I'm not always successful at that, but thinking holistically, like thinking about caring for the soil, the soil food web. Humans are a part of that soil food web. We're terrestrial organisms like everyone else on this planet. So just integrating humans into the farm in a way that is not extractive, but can kind of give back as much as we're taking. And for me, that was to have a lot of people working on the farm, to have a community on the farm living here and enjoying the work and enjoying each other, and hopefully helping strengthen the wider community too.
That's awesome. Talk a little bit about like size of the farm, how many people you have involved, those kinds of things too would be helpful for people.
Sure. Yeah. So we grow on 3 acres. That includes 4 high tunnels and about 2.5 acres of outdoor vegetables and some herb gardens, flower gardens. So yeah, it's about 3 acres all in all. We have, including me, about 9 full-time people working on 3 acres. So that's sort of a magic ratio, 3 to 1 for the kind of intensive growing we do, and we're able to pull out a huge amount of food from that acreage and feed. We have 200 CSA families. We do 1 local farmers market, and we sell to 4 different natural food stores. If we were all CSA, just to give a sense of what we produce, we'd probably feed about 500 families off of 3 acres. But, we're not all CSA. We sell a lot of produce to natural food stores and farmers market as well. And yeah, just try to, a lot of our CSA members are neighbors and, mostly from our town here. We're working more and more on issues of food access and just sort of all the social justice issues that arise around agriculture as well.
Cool. I think one thing that I've been a huge fan of and really admired was your transparency with the business side of it too. And I think that's very cool. Cause I know that when I saw you last year, you were very transparent about investments and salaries and profit and loss and all that stuff. And that's in your book as well. And there's a lot of advice in there about, if you really want to do this and start a business, like here's how you do it, here's how you get money, that sort of stuff. Was that something that was like really important for you to share? Just like helping people actually get going?
Yeah, totally. I feel like that was something that was missing in a lot of the farming books that I read starting out. It was kind of like this sort of glossy picture of like, oh, produce these amazing vegetables and like live this beautiful life, but it didn't talk about like, the finances of getting started or what startup costs look like, how you acquire capital, the kind of risks involved. Like it didn't get into all that. So I wanted to, just be really transparent about, how I did it and what worked for me, in case that would, help enable other people to take that leap.
I think it's really powerful because I think a lot of people get sucked into the idea of farming, gardening, no-till, all this stuff, permaculture, all these kinds of things. And, You know, for you to have a farm year after year, you have to make money. And I know personally that when I make content about that kind of stuff, nobody watches it. It doesn't mean I want to stop making it, but it's totally true. If I talk about like spreadsheets or, you know, like money and business, like everyone's like, no, let's talk about soil and tools. And so I think it's awesome because I think that's really important because I think I always say like, if you're going to be a sustainable farm, you got to be a sustainable business. So it's a huge part of it. But it's great, man. I'm also blown away by how many people you employ. I think that's incredible.
Sorry about what you cut out there.
Sorry, how many people that you employ at your farm is pretty special.
Mm-hmm.
So very, very cool.
Yeah. No, I love it. I learned so much from people. You know, I'm like teaching and mentoring, you know, apprentices, but I'm learning from them too. The ideas and the passions that come through here. It's awesome.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Do you want to take some questions, or is there anything else you want to?
Sounds great.
Okay. So like usual, we take questions from the Patreon members, and then we'll take live questions. So if you guys do have questions, get them in the chat too, and we'll get to those. We have a lot of questions tonight from the Patreon members. So thank you guys for not only supporting us on Patreon, but also for putting in questions, because that's really awesome. You guys are, you know, want to get some answers from Daniel. So, all right, here we go. Jonathan Agnew says, "Hi, Daniel. It would be good to have your thoughts on scale. A lot of market gardens are a few acres. Do you think it's the best scale? Could we have a bigger impact on the food system if market gardens were bigger? Thanks, Johnny."
Yeah, I think scale is a great question. Yeah, there's a whole chapter in the book on markets and scale, because I really believe small is beautiful when we're talking about market farming. There are efficiencies that increase as you scale up, but there's also a lot of inefficiencies that arise, and just sort of overhead costs and administrative that can really like take from the joy of farming if we get too big. So I'm more a proponent of like lots of really small farms. Like let's scale out, not up. So yeah, I think you know, we're 3 acres here, which is actually pretty big for the kind of farming, you know, kind of no-till farming. You know, managing 9 employees is no small feat. So I would say, yeah, sort of 3 acres and is a really good scale. You know, 2 to 3 acres. But again, my ratio of you know, humans to acres is 3 to 1 to really get the kind of production intensity that we get. So if you're just a single person, like maybe growing less than an acre makes sense. And there's certainly successful farmers, you know, growing on micro farms of an acre or less. So I think it depends how many people you want to work with, how many people you want to employ and manage for scale.
Do you think that where you're located has to do with that scale too? Like when you have a shorter growing season, do you think you need a bigger farm?
Interesting. Yeah, probably that makes sense. I've never really thought about it that way, but yeah, I guess we can only really grow actively for 8 months of the year here where I am. So we get around that by growing a lot of storage crops, a lot of carrots and, you know, root crops in the fall. So right now we have, you know, tens of thousands of pounds of root vegetables packed in the walk-ins that we then sell throughout the winter for the cash flow. So in that sense, yeah, we're almost like producing the same amount as we would in a longer season, but we're just compressing it into the shorter season that we have. But yeah, I mean, it depends what, you know, you got to make the finances pencil out. So, and there's many different ways to do that.
Yeah. I saw that carrot harvest on Instagram, man. That looked insane.
Yeah, that was a good day.
That's awesome. I like that idea of scaling out and not scaling up. I think, yeah, it's just getting more people involved in any way that we can. I think that's the key. I think that's important. Cool.
Yep.
Let's see here. Sarah Bell says, "Hey, Daniel, just ordered your book. Can't wait. I would like to know about your turkeys. You graze them on cover crops. Do you supplement with other feed? What cover crop mix do you like for them? Thank you so much, Sarah."
Totally. So I'll say right off the bat, we're taking a break from livestock this year. So we're not actually raising turkeys right now, but it's our first not raising them. We do supplement with feed. We raised broad-breasted bronze turkeys, which cannot, get enough calories from just from pasture. So we do supplement with purchased organic feed. But then we run them over any and all cover crops in the fall. They are wonderful grazers and foragers. So whatever you're growing, they will mow down happily. So yeah, I don't worry too much about the particular mix. But rye is one of my favorite winter cover crops, just for building soil health. And turkeys certainly love rye. And I like to make my corny dad joke of calling it turkey on rye in the fall. So yeah, that's all good. But really, whatever you want to run them on, they'll enjoy it.
Okay. Do you have other livestock? Do you have chicken? Do you have layers? I don't remember.
So yeah, we had layers. We've had as many as 600 layers. We used to have 60 pigs, but we have no livestock this year. Partly because we were doubling our herd of humans. We just had a second kid. So I was just trying to take it a little bit easier with the logistics of moving everything around. So yeah, no livestock this year, but I think we'll get some layers here.
Okay. All right, cool. There you go. Thomas Eliason. Always good questions, Thomas. Thank you. The sample pages of your book look beautifully polished and engaging. Can you describe your writing process? When do you write? What's around you? Please give us a peek into your literary mindset. So paint us a picture, Daniel. Like, what's your sense when you're writing, or is it just like frantic when you have a few minutes? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's funny. I guess I have like little moments of like epiphany out in the field, and sometimes I'll try and jot notes down from that. But then it's like, yeah, when it comes right down to it, it's not very romantic. It's just like, oh shoot, I gotta like put all these thoughts into a entire chapter. I'm just gonna like sit at the computer and plug that out. But yeah, I kind of got in a groove, and maybe more like a wormhole, just like disappearing into writing for a week straight and emerge and try to reintegrate into society.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. This is the first time I've written anything of note lengthwise, so I don't think I have too much insight yet.
All right, so you didn't really paint the picture for Thomas. I think he wanted to like, okay, well, he sits down and makes his like special cup of tea, and then no. Is there like a time of day that works for you, or was it over the winter time most of you were spending time on this, or how did that work for you?
Yeah, definitely. It was like all in the winter. So yeah, it's like I'm a morning person, so yeah, I get up and have at it. But really, I just like I'm also like a one-track mind. I don't multitask well, so I just literally like disappeared into writing this book for most of a winter. Yeah, I'm very grateful for my partner putting up with me doing that.
I think all of us are grateful for our partners putting up with us. I'm just gonna say that. Okay, cool. John Taylor from the Daily Market Farm says, "Hi Daniel, could you talk about transitioning from a weedy plot to no-till and its effect on weed pressure?" It's kind of a broad question, but
Totally. Yeah, I think that's a real selling point for no-till, is the ease with which you can manage weeds. Going to a zero soil disturbance, completely mulched, complete soil coverage at all times. You basically just eliminate your weed seed bank from being relevant. So yeah, I think there's a real benefit to that. If you have really weedy ground, I might suggest like forming your beds, tarping them, then pulling off tarp, making sure everything's dead under roots and all that, and then spreading of compost on the beds and a layer of mulch, whether it's raw wood chips in the paths, and then plant right into that, and you have complete soil coverage. Make sure you're mulching enough with the compost and mulch that you can't see any. If you can see soil, then the weeds will grow. And then plant right into that compost, and you're you still have to weed, but it's going to be far between, as opposed to just like a explosion of weeds that you have to hoe.
One thing
I don't know if that makes sense.
yeah, absolutely. I think one thing I always take away from when I'm either listening to you talk or read what you've written is that importance of obviously the four main ideas, right? We're talking disturb the soil as little as possible, keep it covered, keep it planted, and diversity, right? Those are the four main things that
Yep.
I like to talk about too. But I think your emphasis on keep the soil covered, I think really resonated and just made a lot of sense. And I think that in your book, you talk a lot about the different strategies of when you have different times of year and different tools you have access to, and even using plastic during the growing season as a way to get through your first season. And I think that's really cool that there's a lot of different options out there to make it work. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yes. Sorry, you were breaking up a little bit. My internet's not great.
I was talking,
So
yeah, I was talking about
so
your,
can you repeat the
yeah,
question?
your sort of diverse strategy with keeping the soil covered, and different times of year,
Mhm.
um, different tools you have access to. Like you even said, like, you can use plastic your first year just to get the weeds under control. Just if you can talk a little bit about that, that'd be cool.
Totally, totally. Yeah. So right, starting out like forming beds, with perennial, grass rhizomes and roots. We use black plastic to transition from pasture. So with black plastic, so those perennial weeds can be smothering as we're growing a crop. I don't love black plastic as a long-term solution, but as a transitional, one-time thing to get up and running, it makes sense to me. And then as soon as that black plastic comes off later in the season, immediately we spread compost as a plantable mulch. Basically, treat compost as a mulch that you can direct seed or transplant right into. And then the paths get a more enduring mulch, either leaves or wood chip or straw, or whatever else you have on hand, but something that can, keep weeds down for a kind of a season at a time. And then anytime the soil starts to show through that, they're in the paths, if you start to get weeds, that's a sign that you need to add more coverage, to suppress weeds, but also to just protect the soil. And there's just so many benefits aside from weed suppression. But if you just look at the numbers of the time spent weeding, I think that already pays for itself right there.
Agreed. Cool. All right.
But I guess I also stress like soil coverage ideally is living plants. That's the nature's model of soil coverage is not like imported mulches as much as living plants. So that's the only time we're actually building soil, is when photosynthesis is happening. Soil with photosynthesis is in a state of decline, state of degradation, and I think that's where I get some concern over like some of the no-till buzz is it's defined by what it isn't, and it doesn't really focus on the importance of diversity and photosynthesis as the foundation of soil health.
Yeah, I think I struggle with that a lot too because when I say like when I use that term, people say, "Well, you're using this tool, you're using that tool," or it, it's it's just the word we have right now. Like we have to use it because what else? There's no other way to really describe what we're doing, and I think that's hard for sure. But yeah, I think if you think about those things in particular, I think that's the most important. And I think that people have a lot of questions about how do you start no till, because I think when you are tilling, you have that immediate flush of weeds, and so they stop tilling, and they're like, I don't know what to do. This is out of control. And so you definitely provide a lot of good approaches, and there are a lot of options. But I think you got to plan it, and you got to work. You got to work, with nature. You can't just like force it to do something too quickly. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I think that keeping the soil covered and keeping plants growing, I think can't be said enough. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. So cool. You ready for another question?
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Um, Asher Lyon says, "Hey Daniel, how do you take a soil test with so many layers of mulch? Are your plants able to reach down to native soil with so much mulch? Also, do you have a cultivation schedule in your system? And then your thoughts on paper pot transplanter and heavily mulched system." All right, well, there's still a lot of questions here. How do you talk about soil testing with all the mulch that you have on there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's a delay. Might be slow. So soil test as if it's soil. I don't, if there's like a thick layer or something, I'll move that aside. But I go right. Include is in the soil profile, because actually we've much to for the years, biologically in, if you will, and it happens just from all the life in the soil. So I really don't see the strata of mulch layers. It's just it fades slowly. That is our native soil. So I take a 10-inch that entire profile and test it. Any other putting transplants into that. I think the roots are going right into this heavy on organic matter at the top, but fades out into native soil below. And there's compost to as you start this system, not transplanting into 6 inches of solid compost. That's going to be really hard to keep watered, and those plants as if their roots get into at least some native soil.
All right, Daniel, you're pretty much breaking up that entire time you were talking. I don't know. This is a struggle we have with getting farmers on live video. I don't know. Do you want to try that again? Are we connected right now?
Let me try moving. Get the.
Right now it's good. Yes.
No. That was still a big delay though. All right.
Sorry for the technical difficulties here, everybody. We're trying to make this work. Daniel, if we can't get it to work, if you click the better? I will give it a shot.
Because I could also I could try to reset my internet. Sorry.
No, you're working right now, Daniel. We're good.
Cool.
All right. So pretty much everything you said there.
So we were talking. Yeah. So, still hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, Daniel. Why don't you click the video? Click the video off. We'll just use you for audio for now. There you go.
All right. You hear me?
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, for mulching or for soil testing, I soil test right through to mulch, include the the full soil profile, because there's a lot of compost we've added over the years, but it's been mixed into the soil logically through all the life in the soil, all the plant roots and worms and of soil anymore. So transplanting that is easy too, because the roots are getting into some native soil right away.
Okay, so what about the soil testing you're talking about with the mulch? How does that work?
Include the like if we're talking about compost as mulch, I just include it in the soil test.
Okay.
If we have leaves or straw on the bed, I'll just pull a little bit of that aside to stick the probe in to the soil beneath it.
Okay, but otherwise you want to include that in your sample, because I guess like the idea is for your system is that you're basically you're not really mulching your beds with, like, when you're growing, you're not really using like a carbon mulch. You're using basically compost. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, although we use kind of like a composted bark mulch, just
Okay.
lower nutrients, but yeah, it is pretty fine, through a sifter.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. Going to the next question here. I think the audio is a little bit better now. Um, Zachary Nordland says, "Hey Daniel, when's the audiobook coming out?" Is that something that has anyone
Yeah, I
asked you
think
about?
oh, that's first I've heard of it, but maybe I'll get my friend Ian Mac to read that. He's on this call right now, giving me shit. So
Okay. I mean, I think it would be great. I don't know if that's a possibility, but that would be really cool. All right. So next question here from John Stakowitz. When looking to start a market no-till garden, what would you recommend as a manageable size, especially if you'll be working a job in addition to the garden for the first year or so? So I guess I know you were talking before about scale, but maybe this one's more about, like when you get started. Do you have thoughts about that?
answer to that. Am I coming through? Can
Yeah,
you hear me?
I got you now. Sorry. Try again.
No, it's all good.
Try again. Yep.
Yeah, so I think it depends. If you're getting an off-farm job, how much time you actually have. I think ratio sort of preferred ratio is 3 people per acre, and that's full-time people. So that's growing really intensive. So if if you're only farming part-time, just you like that, start really small. That would be my advice.
Okay. And so how much, all right, so you have 9 employees on, the 3-to-1 ratio, but are you out in the field that much, or you mostly spend your time managing your crew? How does that work?
All right, let me try delay.
Yeah, Daniel, you're in and out, man. I don't know. I can, if you want to try to reset something, that's fine. All right, sorry for the technical difficulties, guys. This is the reality of live internet stuff and rural internet as well. It's always a struggle, and it's the hardest part is that we'll get started and then it'll be fine, and then something will happen. So we'll wait for Daniel to try to kick back in here. Yeah, we have a bunch more questions here, which is very cool. I can tell you guys another thing. Like I made a video today on my YouTube channel about Daniel's book, but like it is just absolutely beautiful. And like Daniel's not paying me to say any of this stuff or anything. It's super, super cool. And I know for all you no-till nerds out there, you'll really appreciate this. It's really a complete book about the whole way that Daniel runs Frith Farm. Are you back, Daniel? Maybe not. Oh, this is a bummer. I wish I could do something on my end. It's something on Daniel's side with his connection.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're here, Daniel. Can you hear me?
I'm
Hello?
really sorry. It was when.
All right, I don't know what to say, guys. I really apologize about this. Having really trouble with Daniel's connection, obviously. Um, do you have any questions for me while you wait for Daniel to try to figure this out? Um, yeah, I know. I'm sorry, guys. There's a lot of comments in here. No, I'm not going to sing you guys a song. You don't want to hear that. Um, oh, there's some good comments coming in here. The neighbors all turn their Netflix on. Um, I hear Daniel shuffling things around. Yeah, so
All right. How are you now, Josh?
I kind of hear you, Daniel. We might have to cut this short. There's a question. Can you purchase your book be anywhere besides Amazon? Yeah, I think if you go to Frith Farm's website on the book tab, I think there's places there you can order from other places. I just usually recommend Amazon because you there?
Bookshop.org is a great alternative to Amazon. Support local bookstores.
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you now. Awesome. For now.
Nice.
Okay. Are we back, Daniel?
Yeah. I think so. I think we're here.
Okay. Let's give this another shot here. The comments are funny in here. Oh, read a page from his book. That would have been. I should have just read the intro, or something. But all right, we're back. I think. What were we talking about? I totally forgot. Oh, starting a farm. We were talking about starting a farm. You're saying start small. I guess you don't have a specific size to recommend to people.
No, I guess my rule of thumb is 2 to 3 people per acre. So yeah, if you're just one person starting out, like start with no more than half an acre.
So is that for field work and harvesting? What about like marketing, delivering, sales, all that stuff? How does that factor into the labor?
Yeah, I guess that includes everything.
Okay.
Yeah, harvesting, delivery, all of it. Yeah, kind of three people per acre is what we're at.
Okay. And how much, like you said, you have 9? I asked you this before. I think it got lost in internet mumble. With 9 people working under you, are you in the field very much? Or are you basically like managing and doing that sort of stuff most of the time?
Yeah, I do a lot of managing. I do a lot of growers live interviews.
Anytime, Daniel.
No,
anytime.
yeah.
You just got to get a better internet connection, and then we can talk about this.
Yeah,
again.
yeah. On that. But no, I'm out in the field, but I'd say probably less than half at this point. Just because that I actually find the farm does better if I'm kind of stepped back a little bit and kind of thinking more big picture, making sure all the ducks are in a row. We don't run out of supplies. Thinking ahead to future plans, and just supporting everyone else. It's kind of like when you take your wilderness first aid training and there's like a disaster in the forest and there's a group of people, like one person always steps back and doesn't do anything so that they can like watch the whole situation and designate and, keep their wits about them instead of sort of being a part of the fray. So yeah, that's sort of me. At this point, I put out fires and I try to just support this amazing crew of people that are here and stay out of their way if necessary.
Yeah, I hear you. Went from working by myself and now working with a bunch of people, and yeah, I feel like I can't get that deep in anything because someone's like, "Hey, Josh, I need help with this," or "I have a question about this," and then I'm like, I have to drop what I'm doing. So it's kind of hard to get too deep into things sometimes. But someone's got to put out those fires. So I hear you.
Yep.
All right, cool. Sounds like your audio is working, so that's awesome. Let's go into the next question here. What are your thoughts? This is from Jody Miller. Daniel, what are your thoughts on the importance of crop rotation and off-season planning for 2021 season? Any thoughts on Dr. Lane Ingham's position that crop rotation is actually detrimental to annual production and establishing family-specific microbial populations?
Yeah, I haven't heard much about that view. I guess it kind of makes sense to me that there's a specific microbial population that according to the species of the plants, and I could see the argument there for trying to build that up, custom for what you want to grow there. I think there's also a lot of argument for just rotational diversity too, and breaking pest and disease cycles and pulling up nutrients in a more balanced way. So I think crop rotation there's a reason that's like part of the a big part of organic agriculture. So yeah, without being a soil scientist, I guess I can't comment more on Elaine Ingham's what she has to say. But yeah, we definitely rotate crops. Mostly I'm concerned with alliums, leaving enough time between, we leave 4 years between allium crops to break those potential pest and disease cycles. And then it's, there's so many things that go into crop planning. Besides rotation, it's just, getting the most out of our short growing season, finding the combinations that work well together, finding crops that will leave the beds in a good state for the next crop, just logistically of, ease of planting. All these different factors. I don't think there's certainly no one right way to rotate crops.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I haven't heard about that angle either, but I'd be curious to hear more about that for sure. And you mentioned too about different different crops liking different fungal life, or more fungal life, less fungal life, and like brassicas and that sort of reaction too. So I guess I don't know. Yeah, maybe it makes sense in certain situations to like make custom beds for certain veggies. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I could see that, like trying to mimic a more perennial system for annuals. Yeah, I could see the appeal in that. Yeah, and I think you could also do that. It doesn't necessarily have to be just one crop. You could have interplantings that sustain that family. Even as you're growing other crops there too. Whether it's undersown sweet alyssum is in the brassica family, and keep that going. Yeah, it's funny. It kind of flips on the head the traditional thinking that like, no, we need to have breaks in the pest cycle, breaks from growing these crops instead of continually growing them.
Right. It kind of goes against what
Yeah.
a lot of us have been saying about, crop rotation, breaking cycles. And yeah, it's kind of the opposite of that, I guess. I don't know. Okay.
Right.
All right. So next question here from John McCafferty. Hi there. Do you see your approach to growing as being scalable? What your ideal size acreage and why? I think we've talked about this already, John, but thanks for the question. Tyler Stowers, what are your steps for planting into crimped cover crop? Do you rake crimped mulch out of the way first, then reapply? And how do you ensure plant rows are straight and at a proper spacing?
Totally. Great questions that the book really goes into in more detail. But yeah, depending on the cover crop and what's planted next, sometimes we plant through it and sometimes we rake it in. So for winter rye, which is one of my favorites, we knock it down in end of May, tarp it for 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the weather, and then tarps and transplant right into that. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. In terms of getting the rows straight, was that part of the question? Getting the cover crop rows straight? We do all the. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if it's cover crops or maybe the plants that are following the cover crops. I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah, that would make more sense. Yeah, so if there's a thick residue of grown in place mulch, we'll use measuring tapes instead of a dibble, because the dibble wouldn't show up through the mulch. So we'll pull a 100-foot measuring tape tight along the row that we're planting and mark out plants that way, and that helps keep them relatively straight. They're still not going to be as straight as if they're dibble marked, but nature doesn't really favor straightness anyway, so I'm not too worried if they're a little bit crooked, as long as we can still walk down the paths.
Okay, there you go. How often are you like are you stringing beds at all to reshape them, or do they generally stay in the same place? Like, how does that process work for you?
Yeah, every 3 years or so, we generally the beds start to slump a little bit just from our harvesting and whatnot. So I'll remeasure them, mark the paths, and just use the rotary plow to just kick the mulch from the paths back up onto the beds. So we're not tilling the beds, but there is some disturbance of the paths. And yeah, that's usually every 3 years or so. And yeah, I do remeasure for that just to make sure they're still 5 feet on center.
Okay. Cool. All right, that's what I got from Patreon members. So let's get into the chat questions, and make sure if you guys hit the like button, that would be great if you're watching this right now. And so get some questions in. We got a lot of comments in here too. And let me see. I wasn't looking for questions. I was, chatting with you about that. But yeah. Andrew Keeler. So speaking of no-till growers workshops, when will there be another? Andrew, that is a great question. We're just not ready to do that at the time being. I know it's not a question for Daniel, but until we feel that it's safe and appropriate, we're going to put those on hold. That's just the reality. We don't have anything planned at the moment. We had to cancel some stuff we were working on. Sorry about that. They were awesome, and we hope to do more. Let's see. Sugar Creek Homestead of Tennessee says, number one most important tool for starting out.
Number one most important tool. I guess some way to shape your beds, or I should have like a really clever answer for that. Maybe like a wheelbarrow.
Okay. I thought you'd say like tarp maybe, but I don't know.
Oh yeah, a tarp. Yeah. Or like if you're doing any kind of soil work, you need, a walking tractor. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a better.
Yeah, those are tough questions. I don't
know. You need a range of tools. You can't just do it all with one tool. So I don't know how to say one is more important than the other.
Yeah. And it seems like you have a very small amount of tools that you use too. So, I feel like I whittle down my tools like every year. I want to get rid of something. So, just keep it as simple as possible. Maybe a rake, a tarp, a wheelbarrow. Is that like what you need?
Yeah, there you go.
And the earthway cedar.
The human body, the most amazing tool. So yeah, keep your body working.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah. All right. Danny Morales says, hey, can you talk more about your decision to remove livestock from your farm, flirting with the idea of getting layers next year for added products, diversity, and having animals on the farm? I think you kind of touched on this before, but.
Yeah. For me, it was kind of a personal decision of just trying to simplify as we grew our family, and I was dealing with a lot. So yeah, I think it was less about the farming side of it. Although the farming side of it is tough with livestock. I think livestock are often sort of loss leaders. They don't make a lot of money, but they kind of diversify your products, and people love seeing animals when they come to the farm. So that's a real appeal. And certainly like something like eggs, like everyone wants to buy farm fresh eggs. So having those can bring in customers you wouldn't get otherwise.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Michael Poindexter says, what do you think about mimosa?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
What is this? Like the drink in the morning?
That's what comes to my mind first. I don't know. Maybe
I'd like mimosa.
Okay.
Mimosas, but I feel like that one's over my head. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what that is either. Hey, Daniel says, hey, y'all. I'm trying to win a compost bin to help feed me and my neighbors. Uh, oh, never mind. This is something else. Sorry, I thought it was a question. Sorry, guys. Lots of comments, not a lot of questions. Here's another question, a sort of a follow up. Jesse Way says, you mentioned scaling out instead of scaling up. Currently, our ag educational systems are geared towards large scale conventional. What are your thoughts on how to systematically integrate small scale?
Yeah, I think we're doing it. Like this call is doing it. Just yeah, just production by the masses instead of mass production. I don't think there's necessarily like a blueprint for that, and that's kind of the beauty of it. Is that it just takes a lot of people being interested in doing it, growing for their neighborhood. So yeah, I think it's really hard to teach that in like a big ag school because there's not a lot of industry behind it, and that's kind of the beauty of it. Honestly, it's a more resilient system that way.
Agreed. And Jesse goes on to talk more. I didn't realize this was in two comments here. But yeah, it's sort of like how do we get this information out to a wider audience and so that, younger generations of farmers can learn about these systems and start applying them and using them. And I think that I'll just speak for a second here. I think that's one of the challenges that someone like Daniel or myself, we're trying to educate and share as much as possible. I don't know if I knew the way to do that, I would be doing it. I'm just trying to make YouTube videos right now and share this stuff. I mean, we gotta show more examples. I think. Sorry, I should be asking you this question, Daniel, but maybe you can chime in. Sharing more examples of these systems and them working in a sense that they're productive businesses and places in society. And I think the more we can share those things, I think the more examples people have and more likely to want to do them. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that was a big goal of mine in writing the book. Was I think there's a lot of sort of larger scale minded people who might naysay the small the small farm and say, oh, it's just not feasible, or it's you can't make a good living, or you can't produce a lot of food that way. So yeah, I think it is a viable model. I think most of the world is fed from really small scale farmers. That's something we don't always talk about. So yeah, I think it's absolutely possible. It's the model that's kept us on this planet so far.
All right, I'm just looking through the questions here. But yeah, I think that's really what a lot of us are trying to do, and I think that there's a lot of great people out there doing great things that aren't sharing things. Like they don't want to be on the internet, they don't want to spend the time working on that, but they're doing awesome stuff. And I think that one thing I always try to do is find as many of those people and share those stories and help each other. I think that we just got to keep sharing. I think that's really the thing that I try to push all the time.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's see here. Just reading through all the comments here about the audio networking. So yeah, we're good now. I saw a question here about garlic. Do you have to mulch garlic, or what's your strategy with that?
Yeah, we mulch garlic pretty thickly. I've used leaves mostly, but I've also tried straw. Both work great in my experience. And the beauty of mulching is, it's less likely to freeze, thaw, frost heave up out of the ground in the winter and or dry out. And then, if it's mulched thickly enough, you basically don't have to weed it all spring and summer. And then we just pull that mulch into the path when we harvest, and then we seed carrots like as soon as possible after we harvest, and we get a crop of carrots in that same bed, those same beds for the fall.
Okay, so the garlic's going back into the same beds every year.
No, sorry. The garlic gets mulched. We rake off the mulch, harvest the garlic, separate out seed, and that gets rotated. That gets planted into a new spot.
Okay,
and we reseed those garlic beds that had garlic to carrots.
Okay. Are you growing in your tunnels over the winter?
Yeah, some. I'm not definitely not a 4 season farmer, and I like it that way. But yeah, we have some salad greens in there right now, but we also have a couple tunnels that are empty, and we'll seed in January, February.
Okay. And so some questions in here about soil blocks. Can you talk a little bit about soil blocks and your thoughts on that kind of stuff, the nursery stuff?
Yeah, I love soil blocks. They definitely take longer in the greenhouse. Spend more time in the greenhouse, but I think they produce a superior transplant. Just the nature of the geometry is there's just more soil in them than in plug trays, and the health of a plant is really proportional to its soil contact with its root system. So um, yeah, and I love that we make a custom mix for that. That works really well. So just yeah, we're front loading a lot of that work in the greenhouse, and giving those plants a really good start, so that when we transplant them out, they hit the ground running.
Okay. And I know there's time saved on the back end of that too, because you're not having to pop out plugs. I think people overlook that as well, because that can take a lot of time too.
Yeah, yeah, totally. But yeah, when it comes to it, like if you can spend a little bit extra time and get a healthier plant, that's going to pay off every time, because the health of the plant will reduce your concerns with pests and disease. It'll increase your yields. It'll just make your life better. So yeah, I think the time argument is certainly valid for running a business, but if you can produce a stronger plant, by working a little harder, like that's why we're farming this way in the first place.
Okay. Have you been doing soil blocks for most of the time on your farm, or is that something recent that you've switched to?
No, we've done it right from the beginning.
Okay.
I've never done anything else, really.
Okay. What about wind strip trays? Have you tried those?
Yeah, I got a few just to try them out because it was like, they're marketed as like soil blocks without all the work. Um, and and yeah, they were fine. They're just really expensive, and they were hard to acquire. I think if they had been an off the shelf item, I might have invested in them. But but yeah, I think soil blocks, but we came up with our systems and they were working, so it was hard to justify like a really expensive proprietary tray to invest in.
Right. Right. If your system's working and you're happy with it, I mean, who's going to argue
Hmm.
with trying to change it up? Pleasant River Produce is, well, I guess, it wants you to expand on your not being happy with the term no-till. Can you talk a little bit more about that, or do you think we covered that enough?
Sure, no, I can talk more about that. I mean, anything that's like defined by what it isn't is you know is defined by the negative. So yeah, I think the no-till movement really needs to focus on like the life of the soil, building soil through photosynthesis, through diversity, and through keeping the soil undisturbed and covered. I think those four principles. And if we just focus on no-till, literally like not disturbing the soil, you can hurt the soil in other ways besides tillage. Like just leaving it bare without living plants is hurting the soil, and it'll degrade more and more over time. So yeah, no-till I think isn't, it's the term we have in it, but it's not an all-encompassing term.
I think, yeah, living soil is a term I'm trying to like use a little bit more and try to make sure that if you have active photosynthesis in the ground and keeping everything alive, I think that's half the battle. Um, and that's the way I think about it, at least. But yeah, I think it's tough with the
Hmm.
no-till. I think it's, yeah, that negative thing. I it's hard because it's like, all right, well, you don't till. It's like, yeah, if you talk to anyone that's really doing this stuff, it's, yeah, like that's the first step. Like you stop tilling, and then there's a million other things you have to focus on. But that I think that's the first. I think that's the first step, really. I mean, you stop doing that, and then you got to think about things differently. I don't know. That's the way I've been thinking about it
Hmm.
lately.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure. Yeah,
okay.
I've seen people like hear the term no-till and then literally just put away the tiller and expect everything to flourish. And yeah, there's right, like you said, there's more to it than that.
Cool. Danny Morales, asking about your greenhouse stuff. I haven't heard you talk much about greenhouse versus field production stuff, but how much greenhouse space do you have now, and what's your philosophy there for cover cropping, rotations amending, winter growing, most important features in a greenhouse? But anything else you can talk about greenhouse growing? Is that very different from
Sure.
growing in
Yeah.
the field?
Yeah, it's pretty different. I mean, you get to like control the environment to a large extent, which is pretty advantageous, especially in a, you know, northern climate here. So we're putting up a fifth high tunnel. So we have 5 high tunnels now. Most of them are 30 by 72. So a fair amount of area under there. And yeah, mostly we use the high tunnels for tomatoes, cucumbers, ginger, turmeric, in the summer. And then in the winter, we do either winter greens or cover crop. We're just experimenting with rye in one of the tunnels this year. That should be exciting because we're going to treat it just like the rye outside, knock it down and plant right through it next year's tomatoes. So I'm hopeful with that. There's not really risk of erosion in high tunnels. So like, the benefit of rye is often to like hold your soil in place, but it's also just like a great soil builder, just pumping liquid carbon down into the earth.
Okay.
So I'm excited to incorporate that.
Are you gonna do like the crimp tarp method for that too, or what is that gonna be different?
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
we'll wait till it's in like anthesis when it starts flowering, which my guess is will be like early to mid May. Normally it's late May outside. And yeah, we'll knock it down. We'll tarp it until it's dead, and then plant tomatoes directly into it, which will be probably a couple weeks later than they would have been if we didn't have to deal with the rye. But I think that is a trade-off that's probably going to be worthwhile. But yeah,
Okay.
time will tell.
All right. Interesting. And interesting to see how that works out with all your interplanting. I know you do a lot of interplanting with your tomatoes too, so that should be
Mm-hmm.
that should be interesting. I look forward to hearing about that. Sure.
Yeah.
Um, Daniel Ramirez says your book is backordered until December. I don't know if that's true. Do we sell too many books
Well,
today,
that's
Daniel?
first I've heard of that.
Okay.
That sounds great if that's true. I mean, that it was that selling that many anyway.
I'll take credit for just a couple, but I think that's you selling your just kidding here.
No, you take credit for a lot. Yeah.
Laverne Click says, do you use paper pot transplanter, and what's your process for preparing the soil for the transplanter? What's your process and soil prep for direct seeding, and which crops do you direct seed?
Yeah, so I don't use the paper pot transplanter, and that's intentional because I think it would struggle with the amount of crop residues that I like to leave on the soils here. Yeah, I don't use a tilther or power harrow or anything, so there's definitely a lot of stubble on the soil, which is kind of the way soil likes to be. So yeah, the paper pot transplanter I don't think would work that well with that from talking with other growers who do use it. It's also a little bit of a hefty upfront cost, and then continued cost of the proprietary trays, paper trays, which also have issues with organic certification with the glues they're using. I don't know if they've worked that out yet. So yeah, kind of on multiple fronts. I stay away from the paper pot transplanter. I love keeping my hands in the soil too for transplanting. But for direct seeding, I think that was the second part of the question.
Yep. How do you prepare your?
We
Yeah.
use earthway cedar, and that can muscle through some pretty impressive residues. So I prefer it to the Jang. It's just it's simpler, cheaper, and gets the job done.
So how about prepping the beds? Do you like add a little bit extra compost maybe when you're direct seeding, or is there any difference between, or it depends on what's coming out? Like, how does that work for you?
Totally, it depends on the crop rotation. So if we're direct seeding after a root crop like radishes or something, we just give the bed a little rake and direct seed right into it. It doesn't doesn't need much at all. If the soil's showing through and we're getting weed pressure, then we'll add a little more compost. Um, but otherwise, just direct seed into it. If it's a crop that leaves more residues, then we might have to, um, deal with those residues, whether rake them into the path to expose the soil a little bit more for direct seeding.
Okay. Here's a question about, although you kind of just answered this, thoughts on tilther or tiller and creating the perfect tilth to seed into. I think you kind of just answered that, but
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I think the natural state of the soil is full of debris. So I don't want to fight that too hard.
Okay. Do you plant garlic into grown in plates mulch? Have you tried that before?
Sort of, yeah. So I've grown like a fall cover crop, peas and oats, and then it starts to winter kill by the time we plant garlic, but it hasn't fully winter kill. And yeah, I've planted it right into that. It makes planting harder because you can't dibble into that. You have to, use a measuring tape and poke holes through the cover crop, but that it worked great. Yeah.
Okay. My man Gene is asking, what's the advantage of your 5 foot wide beds? But they're 5 foot on center, right? They're what, 42,
Yes.
42 inch beds?
Center. Exactly. So technically that's a 42-inch bed plus or minus.
Okay, so
So
talk
yeah,
about that because that's I feel like you're going against the mainstream with that large bed.
totally. Jean Martin's 30-inch bed. Yeah, so the argument for 30-inch beds is largely ergonomic. You don't have to lean over as far. It's also to do with the machinery. A lot of the implements on the BCS can cover a 30-inch bed in one pass. We use very little, we're not making many passes with the BCS over our beds. So that argument kind of falls away. And then the ergonomics, is a trade-off between the extra bed space that we get. Per acre, a much lower percentage of our acreage is devoted to paths since we have slightly wider beds. So it's that trade-off between ergonomics and plantable acreage, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
Yeah, and I'm 6'4", so when I started, I was, I can step over a 42-inch bed easy enough.
yeah, personally experimented with 36 inch beds for a couple things, and I like the ergonomics of the 30 better, but I think it's just personal preference. And yeah, you do get a lot more growing space the wider your beds are for sure. I do like to straddle the bed on occasion, so for me, like 36 was pushing it, and then and then if you have smaller people working with you too, that might be really challenging. But if you give up that idea
Totally.
of that, then I think there's a lot of benefits to wider beds for sure.
hmm But yeah, it really is personal preference. I'm not going to say one way is better than the other.
Right? Do you have a huge rake? Like, how does that work?
No, you just you make two passes basically with the rake.
Okay.
Do one side of the bed and then go back down the other side of the bed.
Need a custom 42-inch rake. Someone's gonna have to make that for you,
Yeah,
Daniel. All right.
yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. All right. Someone out there needs to send Daniel a 42-inch rake. Um, let's see here. Mountain Valley Farmer says mimosa is an invasive plant in Tennessee, so I guess maybe that's why you don't know about it. I don't know. I haven't come across that, but
Yeah, I don't think we have that up here yet.
okay. Here's a question John's asking. What new general information or specific techniques is Daniel looking at or interested in? I guess like what are you
What?
sort of nerding out about right now? Like what are you trying to work on and learn about?
Gosh, yeah. I think yeah, cover cropping in the high tunnels. I'm excited for that because basically it's a different climate zone in there, um, and just constantly experimenting with different crop successions and interplantings, and trying to figure out how to get more cover crop in. Always just more photosynthesis, more diversity. So like undersowing cover crop to cash crops, because our season is so short here that there's once the cash crop is done at the end of mid October or whatever, there's not time to plant cover crop. So to plant the cover crop overlapped with the actual crop, I want to figure that out better. I did some this year, but I want to do better next year. And then honestly, the farm is also just doing a lot of like educational stuff, community oriented stuff, events, and hopefully we'll be able to do more of that with the pandemic next year.
Yeah, I think we've put a lot of stuff on hold. It's been tough to just like, all right, well, we're gonna have to wait that out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's some questions in here about like if I guess this is just time specific for right now. Like if you're trying to start beds now and try to build living soil, like what would you do today, this time of year?
This time of year, I mean, our soil's already going dormant, so I wouldn't do much. Maybe like put a tarp on it if you want to start to smother um, the perennial weeds. But I mean, it really depends where you are. In our climate, like winter is dormant, so it doesn't make sense to start tilling right now because then you're just going to really damage the soil for the winter. So I would, wait till next season. If you're in a warmer climate, yeah, starting to get those. I think the first step is to like get your perennial weeds gone, whether that's generally with smothering, or you could till a lot to kill them. But yeah, smother those perennial weeds, get a layer of compost as mulch on there, and start growing, whether it's cash crop or cover crop.
All right. Some questions here about your soil block mix. Do you use Ellie Coleman's mix? And yeah, I know you in your book you have the exact recipe. So is that the plug? Just by the
Yeah,
book.
yeah. I started with Elliot Coleman's, and I tweaked it a little bit, but it's similar. It's a little different, but yeah, I think he's dialed that in over many more decades than I have.
Okay. There's a question here about. Oh, where was this? I lost it. I'll come back to it. How do you manage slugs with all your mulch? Is that something that you guys have to manage?
Yeah, we had slugs early on with the mulches, and that was kind of stressful for like a season, maybe two. But they've gone away. I don't know whether there's just like more slug predators moving in too, or what, or whether we've just had like drier spells in the summer. I'm not sure, but yeah, we don't have too many issues with slugs and snails. I will say our native soil is sandy, so I don't know if clay soils would, be more slug prone or not. But I think a lot of pest issues kind of fade away as you build just a healthy soil food web, and it gets more and more vibrant. The higher and higher up the food chain, predators start moving in. So often we get stuck at the bottom rung of the ladder, just killing the pests over and over again, and there's no chance to build a higher order ecosystem.
Okay. People are asking about the other cedar. Yeah, it's the Earthway cedar. I feel like that's like the standard one that everyone probably has one in their shed. At least, I don't know. I feel like I bought the Earthway and then I was like, all right, I'm gonna get the Jang. But yeah, the Earthway. Daniel's like a big Earthway fan. Hey, you know what? If it works, like I love
Hey,
it.
yeah, I'm low tech.
I love. Yeah, that's awesome. Although I would say the Jang is like high tech, but I don't know. I guess it is compared to the Earthway. Um,
Yeah. It's what, three times the cost or whatever.
I think it's more than that. With the Earthway, it's like $120 or so.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean the Jang with a couple rollers is probably like 500. I would guess. I don't know. I bought
Yep.
mine years ago, so I
Yep.
don't remember. Um, do you get any rye grow back after tarping the beds? Do you ever have that problem?
No, we make sure to tarp it long enough that it doesn't. Um, yeah, I mean sometimes it grows it back a little bit, but it's so weak that it's not much of an issue. But yeah, we do wait and knock it down until it's already like flowering. at that point it just wants to die anyway. So it's pretty easy to kill.
Okay. Jesse Way says, "Hi Daniel, what's the fertility of your compost? NPK? Do you run into any high phosphorus issues? And do you supplement nitrogen with just cover crops or other amendments?"
Yeah, great question. I go into this in the book for sure. I think applying, animal-based compost year after year is not really a good move, not an ethical move, because you'll build up those macronutrients, especially phosphorus. So I did that in the early years and started to see my phosphorus like go through the roof in soil tests. So now the quote unquote compost I use is actually just bark mulch that's been sifted. So it's very low nutrient compost, and I just use it as a mulch rather than count on it for any kind of nutrient addition. So I think watching those soil tests, and as you start seeing your phosphorus especially get high, like finding a source of compost that is low or no phosphorus. And then for nitrogen, for certain crops we will add a little bit of nitrogen fertilizer, alfalfa meal, feather meal, what have you. We do a little custom blend of a few different organic nitrogen sources, but those are just on the crops that are heavier feeders.
Okay. So with I know you called it vegan compost last time I heard you talking about this, but what I think that's hard for people to find. So like if they don't have time to make stuff themselves, like what are some options for that? Like what's in your sort of vegan compost that you guys have been buying? It's just bark mulch?
Yeah, it's just bark mulch. It's actually a byproduct of the lumber industry. They basically like power wash the tree trunks before they go in the mill. So it's all the like soil and bark fines from the forest that are washed off of that then they sift and sell as a kind of like a landscaping product. But I found it and really liked it for my application here. But yeah, in terms of other sources of vegan compost, like even just making compost from hay, from leaves, from plant materials, as opposed to mixing in animal manures. It's the animal manures that really tend to drive up the phosphorus really fast.
So you recommend using that maybe to start to get that sort of in your soil bank and then to switch over at some point to not using manure-based compost?
Exactly. Yeah, I recommend doing a soil test at least once a year just to keep an eye on things. And as that phosphorus especially rises, and hits recommended levels, then that's the time to search out another source of lower phosphorus compost. Because otherwise we're just, building up sort of toxic levels of phosphorus in the soil that if then there is any kind of erosion, that's all polluting local waterways.
Okay. And so I know you use a lot of leaves for surface mulching, and have you used a lot of like leaf mold to like in your beds? Have you worked with that at all?
Yeah, like leaf mold, just like decomposed leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we mulch garlic with that, and we mulch like all of our beds for the winter with that, and then rake them off as needed to plant them. So the paths end up being really thickly mulched with leaves. And I really see a huge benefit just to the edge of the bed. Like those crops grow taller than the middle of the bed because they're
Interesting.
feeding off of that decomposing mulch in the paths.
Okay. Have you ever tried to like incorporate some of that into the soil?
No, other than like letting the natural, biological tillage happen. I've
Right.
never like tilled it in anything.
Okay. Cool. And is that like are you like stashing those leaves yourselves? Or is that like coming already sort of aged and processed?
Yeah, I stash them for a year. So I got them fresh from the local transfer station, and then let them sit or not. I've spread fresh leaves too. They work fine. But yeah, the longer they sit, the sort of the better they get. You also they decompose, so you lose as they decompose, you lose some of the volume, but it's sort of a higher quality product for feeding the soil after that.
Okay. Let's see. Maybe just a couple more questions. We're already pretty late. I know we lost some time with our technical issues, but Daniel, do you grow any berries and fruit trees?
Yeah, not really commercially yet, but we have over 100 fruit trees planted, and just did maybe about 1,000 feet of raspberries and a few 100 feet of strawberries. So kind of toying with that. Maybe that'll be commercial scale once they all come online, but mostly just for the community here. We have 9 people working on the farm, so keeping us well fed with fruit.
Yeah, you got to have snacks on the farm, right?
Exactly.
How often do you do your soil testing?
Yeah, every fall I do a soil test.
Okay. Um, do you sell? You talked a little bit about this, but how late in the year are you selling produce, and sort of what are your best sellers in the off season?
Yeah, so we've wrapped up our CSA and farmers market. So we're done outdoor harvesting, but we have lots of root crops, lots of storage crops, and we sell those right through year round. We'll be selling carrots still in May. Um, my goal is to sell carrots right up until we harvest the first summer carrots, but usually we're a few weeks shy of that. So yeah, that gets us through the winter. We have all different root crops in the walk-ins.
Okay. Ian Yerelmack is talking
Gerald
about
Mack.
Gerald Mack. Yeah, there's all this discussion about he hates that he drives tractors over his beds, and you don't like that. So there's a bunch
Yeah,
of
he's a big gearhead.
there's a lot of trash talk going on in the comments over here. So just letting you know that.
Yeah, you gotta watch out for him.
Okay. Um. All right. Just here's a couple more questions here. Do you have any experience with mushroom compost?
No, I don't think I've used any of that. Although we have inoculated. We've spread some like wine cap mushroom spawn before we put wood chips in the paths. And then every time it rains or we irrigate, we get a flush of wine cap mushrooms in the paths. But that's kind of a compost in place maybe. But no, I haven't used like sprint mushroom grains or anything for compost.
Okay.
I certainly would if I had, if that were a good thing I had access to.
Yeah, I think that people always wonder about certain things, and like not everyone has access to all the things that everyone has access to. Like I talk to farmers on the coast, and they're using seaweed and was it like hay? I don't know. I forget what it was. Marsh hay, like all sorts of
Oh yeah.
stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Asawaga is using that stuff, and I'm like, man, that sounds amazing. I can't get that. Like, you got to use what you have around you. So,
Totally.
yeah. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for coming on tonight, and I know you're super busy, and we're just super happy to have you on and nerd out, and just a wealth of knowledge. And I really appreciate taking the time and being here and being part of the community. And thanks again for writing this book and getting this out there, man. This is a huge accomplishment and huge gift to the community. So thank you.
No, thanks for having me. Thanks for spreading the word. Sorry, my internet was rough. Thanks for sticking it out, everyone.
I'm glad we got it sorted
pleasure.
out in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I just walked right next to the router out here in the barn.
Okay, so that's the key. All right, awesome. All right, well, Daniel, thank you so much, and have a great night, and we'll catch up soon.
Thanks, man. You too. Talk to you later.
All right, guys. So thanks again for Daniel Mays. If you guys want to check out his book, there's a link down below. You can also find it pretty easily. Yeah, I can't say enough about good things about Daniel and the work he does, and just as a person. So that's great. And just as another reminder, again, we're doing this every 2 weeks on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock. So the next guest will be Corinne Hanch of Loving Mama Farm, and then Spencer Rudolph from Sage Hill Ranch Gardens on December 8th. So that's what we have coming up. I'm really excited about that, and that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much, and we'll see you guys soon.